Jasher chapter 3. And Enoch lived 65 years, and he begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after having begot Methuselah. And he served the Lord, and despised the evil ways of man. And the soul of Enoch was wrapped up in the instruction of the Lord, in knowledge and in understanding. And he wisely retired from the sons of men, and secreted himself from them for many days. And it was at the expiration of many years, whilst he was serving the Lord and praying before him in his house, that an angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, and he said, Here am I. And he said, Rise, go forth from thy house and from the place where thou didst hide thyself, and appear to the sons of men, in order that thou mayest teach them the way in which they should go, and the work which they must accomplish to enter in the ways of God.
And I've been reading the comments too. It's been pretty interesting.
Do you believe that in the Bible it says you can't have more than one wife?
Well, according to Matthew 19, right here. Let me just show you real quick. According to Matthew 19, I think verse 4 or 5, somewhere here. So when the Pharisees came to Jesus and testing him and saying to him, Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? And Jesus answered and said to him, Have you not read that he who made them in the beginning made them male and female? So do you see how in verse 4, Jesus is returning marriage back to the beginning? Then verse 5, and said, For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall be one flesh. So marriage means two people. Marriage is not 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. It's 2. It's one wife and one. It's one man and one woman. So this is where Jesus introduced a monogamy in his teachings, and we can see that Paul built on this and actually implemented actions to fade polygamy away through such things as the elders of the church. If you want to become an elder of the church, you must be a husband of only one wife. So basically he started to implement, like,
verse 4.
Yeah.
Right here on verse 4 that you just read, he's talking about divorce. He's not talking about polygamy. A Pharisee, he came to Jesus and asked, they had a debate between the house of Hillel and Shammai, and one of the topics was divorce, and none of the topics were about polygamy. Because in the debate, they were asking if you can divorce a woman for something as simple as burning food.
Here, I'll post what I was talking about in the video, the debate between Hillel and Shammai. Okay, here it is on Wikipedia. The debate between the houses of Hillel and Shammai.
You can't just divorce a woman for anything. And Jesus, he's pretty much replying saying that you don't get married just to get a divorce easily.
Well, he cancels the divorce completely, because especially in verse 8.
He can't add anything to the law. He can't change the law.
Look what
he's not telling them anything new. He just...
Look what he says in verse 8. In verse 8. He said to them, Moses, because of the heart... So verse 7, let's start here. They said to him, Why did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away? Verse 8, he said to them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, so again, he's returning marriage back to the beginning. From the beginning, it was not so. And then in verse 9, he actually doubles down. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery. Whoever marries her,
he's
who is
talking about
divorced,
divorce.
yes. So he canceled divorce completely. But also,
No, he can't.
What do you mean he can't? He did.
Torah says that you can't change the law. You can't add or take anything away from the law.
Look what verse 8 says. Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, permitted you to divorce your wives. You see, it was because of the hardness of the heart Moses has permitted. But from the beginning, it was not so. And in this one right here too, in verse 6. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate.
Yes. He's saying you don't get married just to get a divorce. That's what they were asking him about. Hillel in the house of Hillel and Shammai.
To me, this verse 19, it just says not the fact that you don't get married just to get a divorce. You get married, you cannot get a divorce. Because once his disciples, in verse 10, his disciples stood up against him too. His disciples said to him, if such is the case of a man with his wife, it is better not to marry. And Jesus then in verse 11 and 12, he triples down and he basically says, if you cannot understand how to be married in a proper way, be single, be eunuch. So he triples down. Why? Because he returned marriage back to the beginning. And in the beginning, there was monogamy and no divorce.
There was no reason for them to divorce. When God made Adam and Eve, they were perfect. There wasn't any reason for them to divorce. But we do have divorce laws in Torah. And if we go to Jeremiah 3, you can see that God divorces, God says that he divorced Israel.
Mm-hmm.
He calls Israel and Judah his two wives in the book of Jeremiah chapter 3.
What's the reason? Because he calls them unfaithful. Of course, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And
but notice he's calling Israel and Judah his two wives.
Uh-huh. And right here in verse 19,
and he divorced.
1999 it says this, and I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality. So Israel and Judah was in sexual immorality. If there's a sexual immorality or death, those are the only two reasons why a divorce is allowed. That's it. So Judah and Israel, according to Jeremiah, they were in sexual immorality against God.
Yes. But I'm saying that God calls Israel and Judah his two wives. So if God himself is saying that he has two wives in the book of Jeremiah, then it can't be wrong. And he's also saying that he divorced them. So polygamy and divorce has to be permitted, especially if it's ordained in God's law. We can go to Jeremiah 3 right now.
Let me challenge you. We can, yeah. Let me challenge you on something. So I understand that polygamy and divorce in the Old Testament. I actually understand this. But can you find polygamy or divorce after Matthew 19? Letters to the Paul, letters of Paul. Of Peter, John, James. Can we find any divorce or anything pro-divorce or anything pro-polygamy after Matthew 19? The answer is no. Before we can, but after we can't.
And I can show you.
Sure. Except, you're probably going to go to the parable of virgins, right? Because that is the only thing.
I can go to that. I can go to other stuff too.
Okay. Show me so that I'll be aware.
Do you want me to start with Matthew 25 first, or?
What is that? Is that the parable of the 10 virgins? What it kind of sounds like.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm aware of this one. And is there anything else by that? Because this is just a parable.
Yes, where Jesus is likening heaven to a bridegroom marrying 5 virgins. It says, then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. And then if you skip down to verse 10, and while they went to when they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriages. It may not say marriages plural in your Bible, but in the Greek it says marriages plural. It says gamus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This
in the Greek it says tous gamus, which is plural marriages, and the door was shut. The reason it's saying the door is shut is because when
I'll go ahead and show that verse right now in the Blue Letter Bible. Okay, here's the Greek. Apechormenon de afton agorase ilten o imphios ke etimi esilton metaftuis tus gamus. This is marriages, and that is plural. The omega, eta, sigma at the end, that suffix is a plural suffix for the Greek, tous and gamus. So it's multiple marriages.
In Israelite weddings, when you consummate your marriage, they close a door to the what's called in Hebrew a chuppah. It's a room where they consummate their marriage. And they need privacy, so they lock the door to keep everybody out,
Well, this one right here, I know this parable. This parable, it has no reference to the marriage at all. I mean, it does have an example of polygamy in it, but this is it's applied to the kingdom, like within the context, it's applied to the kingdom of heaven. That's the number one. Jesus,
It's saying a polygamous marriage is like the kingdom of heaven.
yes, I hear you. I understand this, but also polygamy, it cannot be canceled out right off the back. It needs time for it to fade away, and we actually see how it faded away. And in today's day, polygamy is nearly non-existent on our planet, except for some Islamic and wild men
Well, it
nations.
is, but the problem is that we do still have polygamy, but people are just doing it wrong because the church, somewhere around the 2nd or 3rd century, we had a Greek or Roman philosopher. He was a Stoic that practiced celibacy, and they didn't really approve too much of polygamy. So the converts that didn't believe in polygamy kind of brought that into the church, but that was never really an Israelite. Monogamy only marriage was never really an Israelite thing. So you go back further, like in like the 600s, they started to try to convince the church leaders that they couldn't have more than one wife, but they didn't convince them. So about in the 1500s, the Roman government eventually made it illegal. So Christians were actually having many wives, and there was a church leader named Paulus around 200 to 300 AD. He had more than one wife, and he actually talked about this in one of the oldest Christian letters found. So Christians, they definitely were practicing polygamy. It's just that the Roman philosophers brought their own ways to the church, and they eventually banned it.
Okay, this is the letter I was talking about. Okay, here it is. The oldest surviving letter by an actual Christian contains a request for fish sauce. The papyrus letter, which Hubner dates to 230 AD, came from the village of Theodelphia in central Egypt, just southwest of Cairo, and was written in ancient Greek by a man named Arianus to his brother Paulus. The translation, courtesy of Professor Webner, is below. It reads, "Greetings, my lord, my incomparable brother Paulus. I, Arianus, salute you, praying that all is well as possible in your life. Since Menibius was going to you, I thought it necessary to salute you as well as our Lord Father. Now I remind you about the gymnasium so that we are not troubled here. For Heraclides would be unable to take care of it. He has been named to the city council. Find thus an opportunity, you buy the 2 auroras. But send me the fish liver sauce too, whichever you think is good. Our Lady Mother is well and salutes you as well as your wives. So the church leader, Paulus, in 230 AD has multiple wives. I can barely read it from here, but yeah.
How about this? You mentioned that even the leadership within the church, they practiced it. How about this concept that Paul has told to Timothy and Titus? For this reason, I left you in Crete, that you should set in order the things that are lacking, and appoint elders in every city as I commanded you. If a man is blameless, the husband of one wife, having faithful children, not accused of dissipation, and so on and so forth, then that person can become a leader. And he is telling to Timothy the same thing in 2 different passages.
Well, it doesn't say it. it doesn't say only one wife in the Greek. They translated it to one wife, but the word in Greek is mias. It can be translated to one, but it's not an exclusive one. It could mean one, first, or any. I don't.
As a matter of fact, see, here's a better translation of 1 Timothy 3:2. The NIV says, faithful to his wife, instead of husband of one wife. In the New Living Translation, it also says he must be faithful to his wife. Contemporary English also says faithful in marriage. You see in the Greek, right here, it says mias gynekos andra. The mias here is not like the exclusive number one. You define it based on the context of how you're using it, and by the context of how they're speaking right now, it's most likely saying first wife, which like I just showed, because first wife means he's faithful to his wife.
The word for only one in Greek is monos, and that word wasn't used.
Okay.
And this is why if you go down to verse, actually, yeah, we can keep reading at verse 7.
Yes, the word mono would be a better, if they were trying to say only one wife, they would say monos gynekos or monogyny or something like that. That's where we get the word monogamy from. It means only one marriage. Monogyny is only one woman.
It says, for a bishop must be blameless. Now, most people think that no one's blameless, right? Blameless is another word for perfect. Okay, so most Christians today think that no one can be blameless. And it's saying that a bishop must be blameless as a steward of God, not self-willed, not quick-tempered, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but hospitable, a lover of what is good, sober-minded, just, holy, self-control, hold fast to the faith. But you notice how it's saying not self-willed, not quick-tempered, not given to wine, not violent. You realize that it doesn't say not a man that has more than one wife.
A husband of one wife.
The reason for that is because it doesn't say you can only have one wife in the Greek.
A husband of one wife.
If Paul was saying that you have to have a wife, that means Paul can't be a church leader. That means that Jesus can't be a church leader.
That
means that Jeremiah can't be a church leader.
Yeah, you're defeating your argument right now. You're literally
Paul
defeating
doesn't have a wife. It's saying that
a husband of one wife.
Doesn't it say if they're translating that to one wife, this means Paul and Jesus can't be the leader of a church.
It doesn't mean a husband with a wife. It says a husband of one wife. If it would be a husband with a wife, then it would be a whole different thing. Then Paul would not be able to be the what?
One wife, right? Jesus didn't have one wife. Paul didn't have one wife.
With one wife, a husband with one wife. That means a man that wants to become a leader, he has to have. Well, I'm just throwing an example. I understand. I'm just throwing an example. If you would say a husband with one wife, then basically that would mean that a church leader or a man has to have a wife. He has to have one wife, or at least one wife. He has to be married. But a husband of one wife, it does not mean with a wife. So this one, a husband of one wife, it means that he cannot have more than one wife. But also he can have not.
It doesn't say that.
Well, it
doesn't say that he can't have. It doesn't.
No matter how much. No matter how you're going to imply it, it actually leads to a husband of only one wife. It implies that. Because a husband
it can't imply, it doesn't say that in the Greek.
Okay, a husband.
It uses, like I said, it uses the word mia instead of monos.
I hear you. But think about this: a husband of one wife.
So this.
What would this mean? What would this mean?
Okay, there's different words you can translate the word mias to. You can translate it to a, which means at least one, or And it could also be translated to first wife, meaning it could be translated to first wife man, meaning that he doesn't have illegitimate divorces,
First wife
which
cannot
would
be,
make more sense instead of translating it to one.
first
Because
wife
now if you're
cannot be
saying that
applied
he
here.
has to be a husband of one wife, God himself says he is the husband of Israel and Judah. He also says he's the husband of Ahola and her sister Aholivah.
A husband of
So
look,
this
a
would mean
husband
that
of a
God
first wife.
himself can't be the leader of a church.
Hold on a second. A husband of a first wife. That meaning cannot be applied here. It can't. It does not fit in here. If I were to say a
That would
husband
mean
of
that
one
he can't
wife,
have a divorce. So what would fit better? A man that has only one wife but has 10 divorces,
no.
or a man who has his first wife and doesn't have any divorces?
A man that has 10 divorces, he's an adulterer. So he doesn't fit in here too. According to
But you can have 10 divorces and not be an adulterer.
what do you mean? We just read that in Matthew.
Like if a man's woman is sleeping with another man, he can divorce her. If that happens 10 times, that doesn't make him an adulterer. That makes his wife an adulterer.
Okay, I see what you're saying. That person would be eligible to become a leader, because the divorces is not from
And also,
it's not from his side. It's happening to him. He's not pulling the trigger.
but the church today,
I can't agree with that because if a man's got 10 divorces because his wives keep cheating on him, I'd say he's picking the wrong kind of women.
you have preachers who have multiple divorces, and no one has a problem with that. They have more of a problem with a man that has multiple women that he's never divorced. When we have prophets in the Bible that wrote scripture who had multiple women and were called righteous, who were blessed by God. Abraham had multiple wives. Job had concubines. God himself says he's the husband of Israel and Judah.
All that
You
was
have-
before Matthew 19. All
You
that
even
was before.
have judges. You even have judges in scripture who had multiple wives.
Yes, but
And
everything
they're responsible for judging the people.
everything that you're saying though is before before Matthew 19. Everything that you just said, and I agree with you. I'm not denying what you're saying. I'm saying that
But does God change?
He said it was before Matthew 19, but so was Genesis 2:24. When Adam and Eve became one flesh, that was before Matthew 19.
he doesn't change. He doesn't change. But right here,
Okay, his morals don't change.
well,
What was good, what God said was good yesterday, is good today.
his morals is in verse 8.
It has to be.
His morals is in verse 8. Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, permitted you to divorce your wives. Did God allow the divorce to happen, or did Jews arose against Moses and Moses gave in? What does this mean?
Where did Moses get his law from?
Moses, look, because of the hardness of your heart, permitted. So if he permitted, this means he knew it was against God's law, but he allowed it to happen. He permitted.
It can't be against God's law if God himself is saying that he divorced Israel.
Yeah, for sexual immorality, that's allowed. But with Moses,
Yes, that's fine.
why did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and put her away? A certificate of divorce is for any reason, and to put her away.
No, it's not for any reason.
As much as I read Deuteronomy, it's for any reason. If he's not satisfied with her, if she does not please him, it doesn't really specify which are valid, pleasing reasons and which are not. And right here in 97, it says the same
It says
thing.
in the law. It says in the law that if you take another woman, you owe her marriage duties. So you can't just divorce her for anything.
That's what you're saying is that law is safeguarding a slave wife or a woman that a man has bought. So she's more of a concubine. So that law is protecting a concubine in while polygamy is gone.
It doesn't say concubine in the English. It doesn't say concubine in the Greek or the Hebrew.
She was bought for money. That's what it says over there. Let me show you. See side effects.
The point I'm making is, it says the duty of marriage. Your duty of marriage is to keep your woman. Like, you can't just divorce a woman for anything. You owe her marriage rights.
See, it says, if a man sells his daughter to be a female slave, she shall not go out as male slaves do. If she does not please her master, so who? This female slave that he bought, who has betrothed her to himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. So this law right here, it actually, it's not encouraging, it's not advocating for a polygamy. It's in the middle of polygamy. In case the polygamy,
This is part of the law. If it's legislated in law, then it's saying that it's permitted. If he doesn't want them to be polygamous, then he would just say, don't do that. If like
this law,
don't unalive someone, it doesn't tell you how to alive someone. It says it doesn't. You can't grape someone. It's not going to tell you how to grape someone.
I'll read it very carefully, but you will see, if you read it really carefully, you will see that this law right here, it protects the rights of a slave woman in case a dude is gonna take another wife. It's not promoting polygamy at all. It's actually protecting the right of a slave woman just in case a second female is gonna come along. Because look, if a man sells his daughter to be a slave,
why doesn't it say he can't marry her? He can't marry another woman. It says, if he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish.
Yeah, it doesn't say he can't.
Why doesn't it just say he can't marry another woman?
Well, because the divorce and the polygamy, polygamy and divorce are the two things that Moses has permitted to the Israelites. He knew that according to God's original marriage design, there is monogamy because God has created only one Adam and one Eve. God did not bring 4 or 5 women to Adam. He brought only one. If God would wanted to fast-pace and populate the earth, he would bring few women. But for God, only one was enough. Why? Because that was his original design. And part of his original design, there was no divorce as well. When sin came through, that's when divorce started to happen.
But Adam, even in his perfection, he had one woman, and they disobeyed God. Now, Adam, he was made with no clothes. That doesn't mean that we're supposed to be naked. They were vegetarians. That doesn't mean that we can't eat meat. They only had 3 children. That doesn't mean we have to have only 3 children. God made Eve from Adam's rib. That doesn't mean that we have to wait for God to give us a woman. We can go out and get our own woman.
I hear you, bro. I hear you. But again, if God wanted polygamy,
Abraham didn't disobey God. God said that Abraham kept all his laws, statutes, and commandments. And he told Abraham to be perfect, and Abraham stayed perfect with his many wives. He had wives and concubines. Which are, concubines are wives too, but
Abraham, he didn't. So Hagar was a slave of Sarah. He slept with Hagar only one time. One time, that's it. After that one time, he hasn't slept with her again.
The angel,
he brought Hagar back.
The angel of the Lord told Hagar to return to Sarah and Abraham when she tried to run away.
Yes, submit to Sarah. And do you really think that Sarah would be okay with Hagar sleeping with Abraham again?
Yes, she's the one that gave him Hagar.
And she's the one that regretted, and then she's the one that dealt harshly with Hagar because she was considered to be a wife, and Hagar left. And also then when Hagar came back 13 years after, when Ishmael made fun of Isaac, it was Sarah, the one who arose again and kicked Hagar out with Ishmael away forever.
Yes, the first time Hagar ran away because Sarah roughed her up, that's because Hagar was being disrespectful.
Yeah, because she knew
she was supposed to do.
She knew she was a wife of Abraham, so that's why she arose against Sarah. She's carrying a child of Abraham.
She was mocking Sarah. That's really disrespectful.
Sarah changed Hagar's status from a slave to a wife. Sarah's fault.
Here, I'll show you a verse from the book of Jasher. They'll elaborate on what really happened between Sarah and Hagar. Okay, in the book of Jasher, chapter 16, verse 24 through 29. And when she saw that she bare no children, she took her handmaid Hagar, whom Pharaoh had given her, and she gave her to Abram, her husband, for a wife. And Hagar learned all the ways of Sarai, and as Sarai taught her. She was not in any way deficient in following her good ways. And Sarah said to Abram, Behold, Here is my handmaid Hagar. Go to her that she may bring forth upon my knees, that I may also obtain children through her. And at the end of 10 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 85th year of Abram's life, Sarah gave Hagar unto him. And Abram hearkened to the voice of his wife Sarai. And he took his handmaid Hagar, and Abram came to her, and she conceived. And when Hagar saw that she had conceived, she rejoiced greatly, and her mistress was despised in her eyes. And she said within herself, This can only be that I am better before God than Sarai my mistress. For all the days that my mistress has been with my Lord, she did not conceive. But me the Lord has caused in so short time to conceive by him.
And Hagar ran away. The angel of the Lord told Hagar to return.
And
He didn't
submitted
tell
the slaves.
Abraham, hey, you can't have more than one wife. No, he told Hagar to return.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Even look, this whole
And
entire
God said that I will multiply your seed. God is saying that he multiplied Abraham's seed through his women.
take a
He
look
told
at
Abraham over and over, I will multiply your seed.
take a look at the Bible. Take a look at every single polygamous marriage and see if there is no side effects in polygamy. If there is side effects, then
You can
that's
say
not the
same-
design of God.
You can say the same thing for monogamy. That doesn't make it bad. People
Monogamy.
have problems in monogamy all the time.
Well, if we take Jesus' way of monogamy, Jesus taught us to love our wives same as he has loved the church, and he also commended the church to because if the church loves them, they must obey all his commandments. If you apply,
Come on, man. Look, do y'all know any monogamous marriage where nothing ever went wrong? Like some of you have parents and they've been in arguments before, or disagreement, whatever. Some of you get into fights with your siblings or whatever it may be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything's just terribly wrong.
the structure within a
How many
marriage,
people are Jesus married to?
he
How
has,
many brides does Jesus have in the church?
he has one bride. He
The
has one-
church is his bride.
he has one
The
bride.
church means congregation. So we're talking about multiple people.
Yeah, and it's presented as one bride. It's presented as one bride. Look, the monogamy
And
was a big thing.
There's seven churches, right?
It's not 7 brides, bro.
Come on, man.
You're trying to
Scripture says there's seven churches.
You're trying to twist things so hardcore. Yes, send the letters to the
Scripture says
7
there's
churches.
7 churches, right?
Send the letters to 7 churches. But church as a bride is presented as one.
But the word church means congregation. We're talking about a multitude of people.
Sure.
And I can use an example. Look, if let's say someone in the church let's say the people in church are Jesus' brides, right? Someone in the church does something they have no business doing. So he has to get removed from the church, right?
Okay.
Does that mean he's divorcing the whole church or everyone in that church or just that one person?
Both.
Because we're talking about a multitude of people.
Both. Because he's divorcing the church and he's divorcing the savior.
He's only divorcing that one person. So he's still married to everyone else in that church.
No, the church is not allowed to associate with that human being anymore. So how's he married to the church if the church is not allowed to associate with him? When he repents, the church is commanded to take him back. Sure.
Not allowed to associate with him.
Yeah, if he's removed, if he's removed from the church, the rest of the church is not to associate with him until that person repents. So he's in essence divorcing, yes, the Savior and the church. He's divorcing everything, both institutions, you can say.
Yeah, he didn't catch what I was saying. All I was saying is that if the congregation is Christ's bride, right? And we're talking about a multitude of people, someone gets kicked out of the church. Does that mean the whole church is divorced? Does it mean that everyone in that church is divorced, or just that one person who did something worthy of being removed from the church.
Okay, so in Matthew 5:28, when Jesus says, "But I say to you that whosoever look on a wife to lust after her had committed adultery with her already in his heart." So he's obviously talking about a man looking at a married woman to try to commit adultery with her, right? Okay. Why
Which
doesn't he say the same thing for the man?
which translation? Well, because I mean, it's women don't usually do what men do. But which translation are you using?
No, because he knows Torah. He knows he knows that polygyny is allowed in Torah. So he's not going to say that a married man looking at a single woman is also adultery. He never said that.
What I mean by that is women are designed different than men. Men look at women with lust in their heart. Women don't really do that.
Women look at men too.
Yes, but not. It's not the same thing though. There's no a huge sexual desire. I must have him. It's more of a I want to be more like under him. Him will take care of me, but not like It's not the same. It's not the same from both ends. We're crazy about that part. Women are not.
I know women that are.
Yeah, I know. There's some.
I've had women flirt with me more than I flirted the other way around. I mean, I know this myself.
Yeah, I mean, sinful women can get crazy too. I know this.
And in Matthew 19:29, Jesus says, "And everyone that hath forsaken houses, brethren, sister, father, mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100 times as many." That's including the wife. What's 1 times 100?
Bro, it's fun to talk to you, but you really are bending things here. You really are bending things here.
I'm just reading what the scripture says.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I understand what you're saying too. But you really are bending things. You literally are trying to find anything to show me in the New Testament, bro. Besides the parable of the 10 virgins, you will not find anything that's pro polygamy or divorce after Matthew 19. You won't. I tried.
I just showed you 3.
Let's talk about the
You want
marriage.
me to keep going?
Let's talk about the marriage. Marriage.
I can go to Matthew 8.
Matthew 8. Okay. Okay, so which one did you show? The Matthew 5 was one of them? This one, 5:27, was one of them?
5.
Or 28, I mean, 5:28. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has committed adultery with her in his heart. This is one of them?
But I say to you that whosoever looketh on a wife to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart.
Oh, what translation are you using?
The Greek and English. You know, the word wife and woman are essentially the same word.
Mhm.
In the Old English, the word wife comes from the Old English word weef. It means female, but the word weefman means female, adult female.
Here, I'll show it. I'll show it from the Old English dictionary. Right here, where it says weef. This is the Old English word for female. Weefman means adult woman.
Essentially the same word. And in Greek, the word is gini. Sometimes they translate it to wife, sometimes they translate it to woman. But it's essentially the same word.
Yeah, the comments are interesting, by the way. Yeah, I hear you too. So, I mean, whoever looks at a wife to lust for her already committed adultery with her in his heart, or a woman.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, they translated it to English as wife in the Tyndale Bible. Wait 1 second. Okay, here it is. This is Matthew 5:28 from the Tyndale Bible, the oldest English translation. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a wife lustingly after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart.
Yeah.
If
Let me show
a
you.
woman,
Let me show you
a
some. of the
woman can
things
only
that,
marry one man.
yeah.
That's in Torah. But a man can marry how many ever women he wants in Torah.
Yes.
So
yeah.
if that woman is married and she desires another man, she's committing adultery. If that man is, whether married or single, he's looking at a married woman to try to take her as his woman, he's committing adultery.
And if he is looking at a virgin woman who's not married, then he's about to break God's original design of marriage.
No,
Yeah, because
he's
there was
being
Adam
fruitful
and
and multiplying.
that was again. If God wanted fast multiplication, there would be Eve, there would be Sarah, there would be Jackie, and there would be probably a few more. If he wanted fast multiplication, but he
But
didn't.
there was Hagar and Sarah. There was Jacob and his 4 wives.
Okay.
There was David and his 17 wives. God said that he gave King David his wives.
Yes, he does. He does because again, according to the law
He says
of
he would have
Moses,
given
it's
him
permitted.
more.
Because according to the law of Moses, it's allowed. It's not. It's
The law of
permitted.
Moses is the law of God. God gave Moses the law, the
I
Torah.
I hear you, but we do find in Matthew 19 this verse. Where is it? Let me show you again. We find this verse. If we would not find this verse, look, Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, permitted you to divorce your wives. Because we find this, because we find this. This means that Moses have given in to the demand of the Israelites. And you know, and I know that the Israelites, especially the first generation that came out of Egypt, those people were crazy. So yes, they were literally throwing a huge tantrums towards Moses, and he gave in. If Jesus would not say this, then that means that's
I'd say people are still crazy now.
how God intended it to be. But because Jesus popped 19:8 and he returned everything back to the beginning, this means that the divorce aspects and the polygamy aspects within the law is not according to how God wanted to be right from the beginning.
So you're saying God changed?
He didn't change. Moses put something in the law that he knew what the right thing was, but he gave in to the Jews.
No, that's not what it says.
Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, permitted you to divorce your wife. What does this mean? What does that mean?
That's God's law. And Jesus called Moses' law God's law.
Yes, I hear you. But Moses gave in on certain aspects. That's what this verse means. Wouldn't you?
No,
What does
it
it mean?
doesn't say he gave in.
What does it mean? Read verse
It
8.
says what it says. He permitted divorce.
Because of the hardness of your heart,
It was
he
not like
permitted.
that. So it was, yes. Because he's saying that divorce was allowed because the stubbornness of people's hearts. That's why God, when he was married to Israel and Judah, he had to divorce Israel because they were rebelling against him, worshiping other gods. That's symbolic for adultery is another word. I mean, idolatry is like another word for adultery.
Sure. Okay, but what
They're
is
supposed to be married to God.
what is the verse 8 means? Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, permitted you to divorce your wives. What does this mean?
What does what word mean?
This verse 8. Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, permitted you to divorce your wives. So Moses knew, but from the beginning it was not so. So Moses knew God's original design of marriage, but he permitted something that is not according to God's design.
He's talking about the hardness of the hearts of people that have to be divorced.
I don't see that there. And plus, he's only talking about divorce. He's not talking about polygamy.
When you look at the divorce and polygamy, they usually go hand in hand with the same thing. The polygamy is right here, and the two shall become one flesh. That's God's original design.
Where does it say anything about having more than one wife?
The two shall become one flesh. Now, Jesus, he could instantly cancel divorce. He could, but you cannot instantly cancel polygamy. You can't. Why? Because what if a man has 4 wives? What is he going to do if Jesus all of a sudden abruptly cancels polygamy and says monogamy only? What is that dude supposed to do? Divorce 3 and keep 1? Well, that's a huge injustice. So basically, according to Jesus, and what I see is Jesus has introduced the marriage back to God's original design, and then Paul then doubled down, and he introduced an action that will fade polygamy away over time. And right now, 2,000 years after, we see how, yes, God has caused polygamy to fade away. And he is returning marriage back to original design into this day.
Okay, so if God created Adam and Eve, why did God tell King David that he gave him his wives. David had 17 wives, and he told King David that I would have given him even more. That's
Yeah.
not Moses saying that he gave King David his wives.
Because
That's not Moses saying that he gave Abraham, Hagar, and Sarah. That's not Moses saying that he gave Jacob his 4 wives.
yeah, well,
Caleb had multiple wives. Josiah.
now
God said that Josiah was the best king to. He was one of the best kings, and he had 2 wives.
I hear you, because he was allowed. Because there was no an explicit thou shall have
Was he
only
allowed
one
to do
wife.
that?
He was allowed because Moses he changed he
Allowed by
changed
who?
Moses.
Allowed by who?
Moses.
But God said that Josiah was the best king.
Yes, but the thing is, the law of Moses came from God. So whatever Moses has put down, that's how it needs to be. Now God, it looks like God did not stop Moses also when he permitted the divorce to happen. God didn't stop him. God allowed this to happen. Same thing
Why did
as
he allow it?
same thing. Well, he's allowing such things to happen. Look, same thing as
First, he's allowing it, and he's doing it himself.
no. Remember how
Remember, he's saying Israel and Judah are his 2 wives. He also said Aholah and Aholivah are 2 sisters that are his wives.
well you
He's
got
doing more than just allowing it. He's calling himself a polygynist himself.
well, not according to Jesus. That's the thing. Matthew 19 and on returns marriage back to the beginning. And the beginning is monogamy and no divorce. So beforehand, Moses has
Are we going
permitted.
to stop wearing clothes like Adam too?
Well, Jesus did not return that to the beginning. He returned
Why
the
not?
marriage back to the beginning,
Why
not clothes.
why don't we return also being vegetarian?
Because Jesus did not return that to the beginning too. He actually said, any food that you eat, you're
That's
welcome
part of
to
the
eat.
beginning.
It's part, but he returned marriage only back to the beginning, not food. So why did he do only marriage? You ask him. But I'm just showing you that it's only marriage, not food, not clothes, none of those things, just marriage. But hey, it was nice to talk to you though. It was nice to talk to you, and I do appreciate the challenges that you're throwing. I like all challenges out there because they're making me think, and it's good. It's good.
But do you really think? But you really have to think about this. Why is God himself saying that Israel and Judah are his 2 wives? Do you realize this is why Jesus had to die? This is part of why Jesus had to die.
What do you mean?
When in the scripture, in Torah, it says that when a man divorces a woman, he cannot take her back again. But if that man dies, that woman can remarry because that marriage contract is dissolved because of his death.
She cannot
This is
remarry
one
to
of
the
the
first
reasons
one.
why Jesus had to die. When God divorced Israel, Jesus had to die so he can marry Israel and Judah again.
No. If the second husband dies, the wife cannot go back to the first one. It's an abomination. I believe it's in I think it's Deuteronomy
God is
24.
Israel's first husband.
Deuteronomy, I think it's 24. I think it's
Jesus had to die, and Jesus had to be the flesh of God and die on the cross. So the marriage contract had to be dissolved. So now Israel and Judah can be remarried now
they
to her
cannot.
husband.
No, they cannot return back. If you're trying to apply this
But
to
and if she can remarry if the marriage is dissolved if the man dies. This is why Jesus had to die.
look, this is what this is. Let me just read. When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some uncleanness in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce, puts her in her hand, and sends her out of his house. When she has departed from his house and goes and becomes another man's wife, if the latter husband detests her and writes her a certificate of divorce and puts her in her hand and sends her out of his house, or if the latter husband dies who took her as a wife, then her former husband who divorced her must not take her back to be his wife after she has been defiled. So do you see that once the divorced woman marries to another man, she becomes defiled. The first husband cannot take her back, even if the second man divorces her or dies. She's defiled. So this thing that you're connecting, it doesn't connect.
I have a scripture that I want to show you from the New Testament that proves my point.
Romans chapter 7. Who has a husband is bound by the law.
For the woman which hath a husband is bound by the law to her husband so as long as he live. But if the husband be dead, she is loose from the law of her husband. This is why Jesus had to die for Israel and Judah.
Bro, this woman here is not divorced in Romans 7. Deuteronomy 24, that woman is divorced. Your example is showing a woman as divorced.
Okay, but how, if God is divorcing her in Deuteronomy in the Old Testament, right? He can't remarry her.
That's what Deuteronomy says.
So how can he remarry her? He has to die.
No, even according to Deuteronomy 24, even if the second one dies, she cannot go back to the first one. Right here.
If he dies, it says right here, where the husband which had an husband is bound by the law, by her, in other words, by her marriage contract.
Romans 7,
By
woman
the law to
is
her
not
husband.
divorced.
So as long as he liveth, but if the husband be dead, she is loose from the law of her husband.
Yeah, Romans 7, woman, her husband did not divorce her. Her first husband did not divorce her in Romans 7. In Deuteronomy 24, her first husband divorced her. It's two different examples. And in your example with Judah and Israel, you're pointing that God has divorced them and now is taking them back. So basically, you are applying Deuteronomy 24 example, not Romans 7. So the Deuteronomy 24
Okay,
example
so
is not applicable to what you're saying.
If God divorces Israel, who's gonna marry her again? Somebody else can't marry her.
Not the first husband. So if the first husband divorces the wife and the wife goes off to the second one, she can no longer come back to the first one at all, ever, no matter what the reasons are. What I'm just trying to say is your example is not sticking. Your last example.
Okay, I'm going to have to go. I guess I'll have to break it down into maybe 2 or 3 parts.